Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Total Health Live. I am Dr. Christopher Vogelmann of drvogelmann.com. And with me, as often as usual, yes, is the lovely and talented nutritionist of the stars, Monika Klein.
Hi, everyone. Hi. I feel like I need to sit closer so I can be close like you are.
I can see you better now.
You know, I was watching what was it called? Master of None. It's Anis Ansari's show, and he came back in the third season yesterday, and all the angles, the camera angles were like, there were no close-ups whatsoever. And I suppose because they shot it during COVID, so I guess that's maybe the reason, or maybe it was an artistic technique, maybe it's a combination of both. But anyway.
The C stands for close-up.
Yeah, close-up or whatever.
Not COVID.
So yeah, so anyway, back to that. That was an interesting aside, but we're here to talk about health, and we're here to talk about COVID news. Our first 10 minutes or so are
health is your wealth. I even have a 2-minute video for you today.
Health is your wealth, and that's exactly what Gandhi said.
Oh my Gandhi.
Oh my Gandhi.
Oh my Gandhi.
That's what Gandhi said. Health is your wealth, not the, what we think is wealth.
You may be if your body can't work, you will be impoverished. So what you got? We were just talking about how Melbourne just went into lockdown today.
Yes, you said that, and it was because someone was quarantining. Someone arrived from India who was quarantining.
The hotel quarantine system apparently doesn't work that well. So
were they an Australian citizen or were they from India?
I'm not sure. I think they were Australian citizen who were visiting family in India who weren't doing well, and they came back. I could be wrong on that, but I do know that they were in quarantine in hotels because apparently that's what they do in Australia. If you come from overseas, you are quarantined for 14 days in a hotel.
That's what they're doing in Canada still too. My nephew was going to come back from Africa, where he has been living for the last few years. But so he's so that's what they're doing. So Melbourne, yes. And, it's interesting. California is, before we go on to California, where I grew up, the province of Manitoba in Canada has now become the epicenter, the worst in North America for COVID cases. So that is interesting. That's happening.
So the Winnipeggers are pegging their hopes on getting better.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily Winnipeg, but it's that province. So it could be pockets within the province. I don't have all the details, but it's, that's what happens is it's like, this area of the world is bad, then this area, then, it's just.
It's lots of little spikies.
Little spikies, although California is opening up June 15th. I was going to say June 15th. June 15th, and masks will be, people will be unmasked. The only requirement for vaccine cards are large groups of 5,000 or more. I think it was 5,000.
Probably something like that. They're going to limit
large gatherings, super large.
Your smaller concerts and your mega churches. So
smaller concerts.
Well, yeah, where you have a stadium that can hold, say, 30,000 or 60,000 people, it'll be limited to about to 25-30% capacity. So.
I think, and there won't be any sort of social distancing in those. Here
in San Diego, or the San Diego Padres at Petco Stadium, they actually have vaccine sections now, where the vaccinated can watch the game, and the unvaccinated are become, I guess, somewhat the untouchables, who are in a different section of the stadium.
That's the problem. So this came directly from the county of LA, one of their medical. Spokespersons.
Spokespeeps? Did you say spokespeeps?
A spokeswoman.
Okay.
She's a physician, and she was stating that the vaccination card would only be needed in those environments. I don't think. Oh, here it was. The vaccination cards would be required, and those who aren't vaccinated would require a swab test. I think within 24 hours of going to this event. So those were the stipulations.
Yeah.
And social distancing was not required in those environments anymore as of June 15th. And we don't know what can happen in the next 2 weeks, but hopefully we're on the move forward and definitely opening up. There was also conversation in this particular physician spokesperson from the county of LA talking about the idea of booster shots, and that still people don't know about that or if it's going to be needed. So it's still questionable. We don't really know.
I had some great studies. I was taking a deep dive into all this stuff last night, and I can tell you what's interesting is that of those who had the COVID-19 infection and recovered and subsequently took the vaccine, whether it was Pfizer, Moderna, doesn't matter, there is a multifold increase in T cells and particularly B cells in the bone marrow, which could actually give those who had the infection and then got vaccinated immunity for many years, as many as 3 to 5 years. So there's some benefit to having gotten sick first. So.
Yeah. Well, I think with shingles, the shingles vaccine, I think it's a 5 or 10 year immunity, I guess that we could use that word loosely. Or requirement to get the shot, the booster shot.
Well, I mean, I've been an anti-vaxxer for most of my entire life, and so but it's intriguing to me to see some of these developments in messenger RNA and other things like that. So,
have you been an anti-vaxxer or just not getting vaccines?
Well, just not getting them, getting them. And I think so in that respect, I've been classified as an anti-vaxxer. But
so anti-vaxxer would mean you're more of an advocate or an activist about that. I would suspect that that's more of the description of an anti-vaxxer, someone who's very outspoken and advising other people. Well, I don't know about advising.
Well, my dad never took a vaccine. I remember they'd always offer him in the retirement home, the assisted living, and even the hospitals, they'd always offer him a flu vaccine or a pneumonia vaccine, and he would always turn them down. And it was just fascinating to watch the look on people's faces when they walked through there.
When they walked through where? When
he was refusing in front of more than one healthcare provider. It was great.
Yeah.
I think I just loved watching them squirm just a little bit. So
I'm just wondering how this light is. My light looks very hot.
Yeah, you look hot. That light.
Yeah. So anyway,
no, I think it's just bright. It's not bad. It's not bad. I learned a lot about messenger RNA vaccines, and it was quite intriguing in terms of the relationship between B cells and T cells and killer T cells and all of the various things that occur. And there's a lot of rumors about the messenger RNA vaccines altering your DNA, but it never comes anywhere close to the nucleus. So
they're also talking about the spike proteins, maybe more spikes, more proteins to the various, more spikes need to be addressed, not just the one protein. So that was an interesting thing I picked up.
More spikes? What kind of spikes?
More spike proteins need to be added, not just the single spike protein that's in the COVID vaccine.
Oh, well, I remember that so I went actually I'm intrigued by the Pfizer BioNTech, and the BioNTech people are the ones who intrigued me the most because their original studies on messenger RNA were all centered around immunity and cancer treatments. It had nothing to do with vaccines, which was really curious. And it was really interesting. And so the research had been going on for more than 20 years and was just repurposed into vaccines. So I thought it was very interesting from our German friends over there at BioNTech.
So it was chemo. It was a chemo treatment or chemo.
Well, not chemo
related at all.
Not chemo. It's protein related.
Okay. So it's not related to any treatments per se.
Well, no. Those are the research. The research was related to creating treatments for cancer, but using immunotherapies that are protein-based rather than inorganic chemical-based. In other words, instead of having toxins, having targeted proteins. So that is what really fascinated me, and how that technology could be reapplied to something else. So
yeah, so it is a technological an advancement, I guess we could call it.
It's an innovation. I mean, I
Mhm.
hearken back to my mom who had skin cancer, and she protected herself with all kinds of things, but still got it. She used to read books in the shade of a giant apple tree at my grandparents' cottage, and she still wound up with skin cancer. My dad kept it at bay for maybe 20 years or so, using caustic substances. One was called herb veil, which you can no longer get, and would just basically eat away at the cancer cells, and then it would heal over, but it kept coming back again and again. So after about 18, 20 years of that therapy, she wound up getting radiation. And I was so shocked that the radiation worked. It got rid of the skin cancer and it never came back again. So
how old was she when that happened?
Probably in her 80s, I want to say. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Somewhere in her 80s, yeah. I thought that was quite intriguing, but my dad kept it at bay because most of the dermatologists who looked at her, they all wanted to cut that monstrous thing out, and she would have had a large crater on her face, and it was vanity. Vanity is what protected her.
Yeah, well, good for vanity.
See, there's a positive to vanity. So.
There is. I mean, there's a place for it for sure.
I did capture a cool little video, but it's like 2 minutes long. Maybe if I have time later, I can share it.
Sure. What's it on?
It's showing the process of transferring information in messenger RNA. I thought it was really cool. So,
well, if our audience is interested, we could end with that, right?
We could end with it. Why don't we end with that? It'll be like a 2-minute dealio. So stay tuned. This is your cliffhanger. This is your cliffhanger.
Yeah, stay tuned. You'll get a prize. That's interesting. They're giving prizes for if you get your vaccine.
Yes.
It's almost like a lottery.
I think there are five potential prizes of $1.2 million each. So 5 lucky winners, and those next 2 million people in California are eligible for that lottery.
It seems very, very odd to be doing.
It's also, I can tell you though, it's very highly motivational. You look at Ohio.
Of course. Why?
Ohio.
Why would they do? Why would they do it?
And you don't have to buy the lottery ticket because you get free entrance to your vaccine.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting. Ohio was the first one, I believe, who did that, Governor DeWine. And he had these $2 million, these draws and stuff. And people just kept flooding into clinics in Ohio to get those vaccinations. So money still talks.
Oh, of course it does. Of course it does.
Yeah. As it does in Big Pharma. I used to work for Big Pharma. Not something I was proud of, but I used to tell my dad, he was upset about it. And I told him I was doing research behind enemy lines. And reframing it that way seemed to give him a considerable peace of mind. So,
speaking about the anti-vaxxing movement, there is someone at Green Meadow Info, run by someone named Sayerji, and he was on an NPR interview, which he showed the entire interview, and it was the title of the article was non-vaxxing advocates or activists profiteering from the anti-vaxxing movement, which I find it's bizarre. I think maybe some do, but I don't think.
Sure, because any political movement, even if they have, good old 503c nonprofit status, they will pay their executive directors, they will pay certain people, they will often pay PR agencies and advertising agencies and others with funds. And unfortunately, that's one of the things that happened to the what was the pink ribbon? The Susan G. Komen Foundation was famous for that stuff. That's why a lot of people don't donate to them anymore.
Right,
so.
But those are large nonprofits. Yeah,
but you only have to start a small one to make it large eventually.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not sure. I look at a couple of these are leading people in the alternative and the complementary medicine field. So anyway, I mean, there's profiteering for every facet of life, I suppose, but, I don't know. But anyway, it was a very interesting, interview.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's go with Q&A. Excuse
me.
Have a lead into the Q&A.
How do you lead in from Q&A? Do you know the way to San Jose? Hey, in fact, Brooke.
Oh,
San Jose rhymes with Q&A.
I thought you were going to rhyme with San Jose with the Q&A.
I do. Brooke's from San Jose, and she's giving our first question. I think it's a she. I'm hoping Brooke or she.
Brooke is from San Jose, and she's on our Q&A.
I wonder if she's a San Jose Sharks fan in the NHL.
I don't know. But what's the question?
It really isn't a question. I think she's looking for the best exercise for someone who's never been into fitness at all.
That's the question. Oh, okay. So
there was no question mark. So I don't know if she's asking it or she's suggesting, or ask me. She's asking for a suggestion. So.
I have run into many people like that in my practice over the years, and this happens. Some people just have never been exercisers, for example, or they think exercising just has to be when you go to the gym or you go hiking or whatever. But exercise can be simply going up and down the stairs 50 times, doing gardening, house cleaning. I mean, that's all movement. That's all physical movement. So my question to Brooke is what do you do daily? What's your daily physical activity like? And why are you interested in this right now? I mean, are you interested in a fitness program now? Are you interested in doing something more sports oriented?
Are you an injured CrossFitter who hasn't been exercising for a long time? CrossFit built my practice in my later years.
Well, I think she's never been into fitness at all. So she wouldn't be an injured fitness person at all.
What is she?
That's interesting that you mentioned that.
Is she a mountain climber, Minnie, instead? And she doesn't see people regard fitness, as you said earlier, as being in a gym or running. And if you're a mountain climber, I don't think they think of it as fitness.
What do they think of it as?
They think of it as challenges, getting into nature, accomplishing a great goal.
So that's interesting. So it's like the terminology. What really do you think of as fitness? Exercise, all these terms, what do they actually mean? Are we talking about movement? Or are we talking about an organized kind of class or, Peloton or cycling?
Even moving your joints every which way they were intended to move. Movement is not necessarily something that will increase your heart rate, but it can increase the functionality of all your joints. If you just do this regularly, you'd be surprised at little arthritic things or certain parts that are stuck in your hands that you may not normally exercise. So. And
it's interesting too, that you, again, we don't know why you're interested in doing fitness, because often we get weight questions, not all the time. I mean, it's not always about weight. We get questions about injuries and all sorts of things, sleep and what have you. But, if it is weight related and you feel like you're pressured to start something, I
would say start walking or get an exercise bike.
And find something that you enjoy doing. I mean, if you like walking, do that. If you like swimming, do that. If you don't like anything, well, then you have to push yourself a little bit.
Brooke, if you're a championship country western dancer and we're never into fitness, you probably are already fit.
Yeah, that's
dancing's a great one.
That's another thing. People don't think of dancing as fitness, but speaking as someone who was in the dance studio many days a week for years and years. It's beyond fitness. Let's put it that way. It's
beyond fitness.
Beyond fitness because
the Monika Klein story.
It's athletic and also artistic in the same vein, but it's really quite demanding. It can be really quite demanding. So always just find some movement that you like to do.
You're an artist.
Half an hour a day, something that you like to do. I had a neighbor here outside. She was cutting the hedges on our yard today. And I thought, wow, okay, that's great.
She's ambitious and she knows that you may have issues with doing too many things.
Well, I think she does that for a lot of people here.
Yeah. So there's nothing special about you.
We like each other. It's good to like your neighbor. That's
good.
Sure.
Good. Love thy neighbor. That's what they say.
Yeah. So I hope that helps, Brooke.
Brooke, I'd say, even walking. I admonish people just to walk 20, 30 minutes a day. And that in and of itself is a great start. So, Brooke, where are you? Okay, Brooke, that's you. So now Deb from Pittsburgh, Yuns. Yuns. How to manage a holiday weekend now that restrictions are loosening up. How to manage a holiday weekend now that restrictions are loosening up. She wants to know how. Oh, so maybe how do I manage? How to be not only safe, but also make healthy choices at the next barbecue or party. So I'm assuming this is how do I manage the holiday weekend coming up with Memorial Day, and how can I stay safe as well as make good choices to the next party I attend. I think that's it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think that's it. I think that's it, Deb. I think I got it.
How do you do that? Well, is it going to be like it always has been at these holiday parties? I'm sure people are going to be a little more cautious.
Especially at the buffet table.
Yeah, especially at a buffet table, but barbecues. And, I think there's sort of two camps here. Like one camp is just going to go, I don't, caution to the wind. I'm just going to do whatever I want. And the other camp will be like, I'm still going to maintain my distance, wear a mask when I have to. So I'm not sure where you fall in this category, Deb, but just use common sense. I mean, a lot of it's just common sense.
Common sense is not terribly common, as I have found out during the pandemic.
Well, yes and yes. So I would think, though, you have common sense because you're following our weekly.
Well, you're actually asking questions as opposed to Deb. A lot of people just go ahead and full speed ahead. Damn the torpedo.
Yeah, and you're asking questions, and you want our input, and you want some more clarification about what you can do. So I don't even think of potlucks or people are doing potlucks anymore. I'm sure people are doing barbecue
except that pot is legal in California in small things. So you might be lucky with your potluck.
Potlucks, yeah. Pot in your brownies or whatever. But so, yeah, I mean, yes, things are opening up. Restrictions are being lifted. It's still not June 15th yet here in California, but you're not in California. You're in Pittsburgh. I don't know what your restriction lifting scenario is out there in Pennsylvania, but
I hearken back to one of my friends. What was it? The fellow who did the Clinton campaign years ago, James Carl, used to say there was Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and in between was Central Alabama. So there's diversity in belief in Pennsylvania with regard to vaccines and mask wearing and everything else. But Deb, if you're in Pittsburgh, you're probably in a pretty safe area, and I would suggest that you just stay together with your close friends and family who you've been with through the pandemic times. This is not the time to attend a kegger or a 500 person event.
Yeah, and yeah, just rule on the pay attention and be a little more cautious. I think what would be great is for us to imagine next year at this time, it'll be even better.
Far different, yeah.
We are so much better off than last year at this time. So still maintain some of your cautionary behaviors and, just have a good time.
I would say enjoy yourself and just stay away from people you really don't know well. I mean, at least maintain a little bit of distance there, because sometimes you meet up with people who are not necessarily as cautious as you are, and you don't want to go to an event and contribute to a super spreader barbecue.
Yeah. I actually had my first hug since COVID, like 2 weeks ago. It was like really amazing. I mean, I think people have missed out on hugging for sure, but it was my first hug, and it was just like, oh.
We've had a lot of hugs around this house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because you're together and you're, in the same pod, as you say.
Same pod, even the 13-year-old, which is remarkable to me.
Well, there you have family.
We're not tree huggers. We are human huggers.
Human huggers. You can be tree huggers as well.
You can be a tree hugger and a human hugger, but just don't get them mixed up.
And really have Deb just have a great Memorial.
Enjoy yourself. Enjoy
Yeah.
yourself.
Enjoy yourself.
Practice safe barbecuing.
Safe barbecue. Used to be safe sex. Now it's safe barbecuing.
Safe barbecuing. Safe
partying.
partying.
Safe
Party
partying.
on safely. Harold's our next questioner. Harold is from Greenville. I'm assuming you're from Greenville, South Carolina, a place I love.
Oh, there's Greenville, Mississippi, I think, as well.
Oh, there is? Well, I'm assuming you're from my favorite Greenville, Harold. So if you're not from South Carolina, let us know in the comments here. He says, most of my family members have a sweet tooth tendency, but I'm the guy who likes salty things far more. My favorite food is anything made of potatoes. Was I Irish in another life? Here we go. Monica will give you a past life reading right now.
Yes, I will. I see that you were
Irish.
It was just the Irish that were eating potatoes.
Your great grandfather was Mr. Potato Head.
Oh, yes.
And he was anatomically correct.
So
this is interesting. So this is a controversy we've seen more than once, actually, where family members, some people just gravitate towards the desserts and other people like savory things.
Yeah, I see it in my family. I mean, I really do. I tend to be more of the sweet tooth person, and there's, I'm not sure if people are 100%, but if I were to choose, it would be more sweet. My sister, this sounds like my sister in some ways. She likes salty and savory, and potatoes are like potato pancakes, potato chips, potatoes. And maybe
if I had my choice.
Oh, really?
Now, mind you, this is kind of bitter, but
yeah, that's what I was saying.
To me, bitter is better. So
I would say the trend is bitter, dark chocolate, darker the better. But for me, it's so bitter that I would rather not have it. And in Ayurvedic medicine, according to my dosha, which is my body type, bitter is not good for me. Bitter is not good for me. Neither is sour. So pay attention to those. If you don't like bitter, do you like bitter?
I mean, I don't necessarily like bitter, but I like the higher percentage of cacao. I've always have. I mean, milk chocolate to me is just wimpy, for example, and I would always gravitate towards the dark chocolate.
Well, I like creamy and luscious.
Well, I like creamy stuff. Like my wife makes a really great flan, and I love that. Even though I'm sensitive to dairy, I'll just pop a couple of lactose tablets and go after the flan.
So you're lactose intolerant?
It's my reveal here on Total Health Live.
Yeah. So interesting. There's also a conversation that I was having this week about IBS, and Now, mind you, if you give me a hard cheese, I can eat Parmesan till the cows come home, literally, and there's no trouble whatsoever. So it really has cheddar. How about a cheddar? Or
if it's a hard, sharp cheddar, not a problem. But you get me into the milk category.
So it's more of the milk, of course. It's lactose. It's not.
It's like ice cream, baby. Ice cream is my nemesis and my love.
I see. So this is lactose intolerance. Yeah. I did a genetic test and I am not lactose intolerant.
Well, you can have my ice cream.
Yeah. But, again, there's the fat component of ice cream as well, and that can cause some loose stools for sure. So
I am not going down that road.
But we are talking about
we're talking about our friend from Greenville.
Sweet and salty.
And Irish in a past life.
Yeah, and this craving for potatoes. There is a genetic factor here, sweet tooth genetic factor for sure. And so for you, I don't know if there's a salty tooth factor.
As you're going along your DNA in your little genome, you might suddenly find a little Tootsie Pop in the middle of the whole thing.
So that's funny. So if you have a choice between a cake and some potatoes, the potatoes are probably better for you anyway. There's so much more nutrition in potatoes because they're a natural food and they just have a lot of good things in them.
Except if they're McDonald's French fries, in which case they're coated in sugar for the caramelizing prior to being dunked in the oil that's used over.
Right,
and
and then they become plasticized in the actual process of frying them. So there's a whole. It's not good. But say, for example, you just have, like, I just bought some fingerling potatoes. They're so tasty. And I enjoy those. So that's the kind of potatoes you want to have. And certainly, sweet potatoes or something else. But a lot of people who like my sister who love potatoes don't really like sweet potatoes.
Yeah, it's a different dealio. I can tell. I have a similar taste palette, which is I would prefer a regular red or fingerling potato than I would to a sweet potato. But I eat the sweet potatoes because I know they're good for me, and they have that marvelous color full of beta carotene. So,
and they are
other carotene.
They are less starchy as well. For my husband who's diabetic and renal patient, he cannot have regular potatoes, but he can have sweet potatoes. So yeah, I mean, yes.
Yes, we have no bananas, but you can have your potatoes.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're asking if it's a good thing or a bad thing, one or the other. No,
I don't know. The past life question is what threw me a little bit there, Harold. So
I think that was probably a Harold joke.
Harold.
Harold
You're
joke.
Harold from Greenville.
Joke.
You are such a jokester. I bet your family loves you.
Just like Christopher.
Yes, Harold, you and I should get together next time I'm in Greenville.
You find that in your family too, that some gravitate towards sweet and some salty?
Yeah, I'm more the sweet tooth guy, but that's modified. It's interesting. The less sugar I consume, the less desire I have for it. So,
yeah, well, I always say, this is something I always say, 1 bite is too many, 1,000 bites are not enough when it comes to sugar. So once you start, you can't stop. So just don't start.
Well, I mean, it's relative. Yeah, I found that I can stop, that's exercising a greater degree of self-control than I had maybe even a decade ago. So,
well, for most people who do have a sugar craving, subject, vulnerable to sugar cravings, just stay away from it. And it takes about 3 days to get rid of the physiological craving. But the mental craving and the habitual craving, it takes a little bit longer.
Okay.
So
hopefully, Harold,
go
for it. You just have a baked potato on the grill this weekend. Mike from Seattle states, I love the outdoors, especially hiking. What are the best food items to take with me on a relatively strenuous hike? I usually hike 2 to 3 hours, often in the local mountains. Got any ideas?
Yeah, Seattle's a great place to go hiking. Well, high impact, energetic foods, nuts and seeds, fruits, dried fruits, something that's easier to digest. So not a lot of nuts, because they can, they may not be as easily digestible, but, a lot of people use trail mixes. And of course, those are laden with nuts and raisins.
I mean, as they say, sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. And
then there's, quite a few. Then there's quite a few bars that you can get.
There's some good ones out there. There's one that Whole Foods sells that my wife likes in particular. I mean, they're not cheap. They're like $3 a pop, but they're.
Which one? The Kind? Are they
No, Kind? It was a different
Laura bars. Yeah, there's so many bars out there. So you want to just look at the sugar content and choose, higher fiber content versus higher sugar content. So those are good. And you want to also take lots of hydration and electrolyte so you can replenish the electrolytes you're using. I remember going on a hike once in the Santa Monica Mountains here and did not bring any water.
Not good. That happened.
And I went with a seasoned hiker. Well, I learned my lesson for sure. That was not a good thing. Always bring enough to drink and certainly enough foods. But just snacking, small little snacks, fruit, also good.
And bring a little extra for your companions who might not have been as prepared as you are.
Yeah, good. I mean, beef jerky is good. Things like that are light and easy to, carry and also munch on.
Yeah, those are good suggestions. So enjoy your hikes. Hopefully you get out there this weekend. I think it's going to be nice all over
Yeah.
the Pacific.
Well, who knows about Seattle?
Well,
It
there's a
may
lot
be
of rain.
rainy.
There's a lot of rain. My niece lived there for quite some time.
Yeah, and my family lives up just 3 hours away. So,
Wow.
but I think Vancouver might be sunny this weekend. Who knows?
This
They
year's.
had their long weekend last weekend.
Oh, there was a long weekend. Okay.
Oh yeah, they have. We used to call it Victoria Weekend, Victoria Day Weekend, Queen Victoria. Then we
Queen
called it
Victoria.
Firecracker Day, and I think it's called something else now.
Firecracker Day.
Yeah, because you'd always have the firecrackers.
I can't wait for Firecracker Day, Daddy. Hey.
So yeah, it does look sunny, partly cloudy.
Well, there you go. Partly cloudy, and
Yeah.
thanks for the weather report there.
Yeah,
Canadian weather. Canadian weather is brought to you by Trader
You're
Joe's.
welcome. You're welcome. Trader Joe's. Yes, there you go.
We're ready to go back to Trader Joe's. Abigail from Tucson. She is asking us the following.
Yes.
My breakfasts have been pretty darn healthy and consistent over the years, but later in the day, particularly after dinner, my uncontrollable cravings kick in. What can I do? I have empathy for you, Abigail.
You do that as well, Christopher?
Not anymore, but I used to. In fact, I rarely consume breakfast anymore. I think I take, or if you call it breakfast, it's something that I would have at 11:30 in the morning, which moves over into the lunch frame. And I find I do better. I have more energy in the morning if I don't eat the most important meal of the day. So.
Yeah, everyone's different, but it sounds like your breakfast is not a concern, and it's like I find that most people usually eat the same thing for breakfast. I in my programs that I put people on, it's like these series of about 5 different choices, and years later, after they've done this program with me, they're still eating those healthy, balanced breakfast, and they don't need to be big. I mean, it could be an apple and some cheese, for example, or cottage cheese and strawberries, for example, with some almonds in there. I mean, you've got enough protein, carbohydrates, and fat to sustain you. So it doesn't need to be filling. So breakfasts are, people just want something automatic. It's like early in the day, they want something quick, they want something automatic and nutritious. So, I hear this all the time. It's breakfast, check, good. Breakfast, good. Lunch, not bad. Dinner and after dinner, a catastrophe. A catastrophe, because then, they're either still hungry, they haven't eaten enough, or they've, there's too much time in between meals. So they're famished and they're overeating. For various reasons, you're too tired and you feel that food's going to keep you going for the rest of the evening. There's various reasons why you're having too much at dinner or having too much after dinner or snacking in the evening. There's various reasons for that. I know you wanted to say something, so I'm going to stop right there for a minute.
Now I forgot. No, actually, I do remember as a kid, we had when I was in elementary school, we would walk home for lunch because we're only a block and a half.
Yeah, we did too. We did too.
And we had the really big meal of the day was at lunchtime. So that was our dinner was around noon or 12:30, whatever you want to call it. And so, kids would be at school. Those who lived farther away from the school were kept in the lunchroom, whereas those of us who lived close enough, we go home, and we would go back from our house to school in the afternoon, and we'd compare what we had for lunch. And so somebody say, yeah, I had peanut butter sandwich. Well, I had a bologna sandwich, and I had some chips, and I had this. Well, I had flank steak and a salad, and I had some green beans, and I had some carrots, and I had, something else, maybe a tiny bit of a dessert or something like that. And they would just look, their jaws would just drop. Say, what? That sounds like a big dinner. But in the evening, we would have soup and sandwiches.
Yeah. So there was no such thing.
Yeah.
There was what? What did you call it?
We called it supper.
Supper.
Dinner was the noon meal. supper was the
Yeah,
evening meal.
supper. We used to call ours supper and lunch. We called it lunch. We didn't call it dinner. We called it supper. And I think that's a very, well, I'm not sure if it's Midwest or whatever it is, or I guess it isn't because you called it that as well. So we used to have sandwiches and soups, and there was no such thing as a lunchroom at our school. There was no lunchroom. Everyone went home for lunch. And so
I see that in Switzerland too. We had friends in Switzerland, and their kids would come home during the lunchtime, eat their food, and go back to school.
Yeah, that's what we did too in our little Switzerland.
Your little Switzerland, known as Winnipeg. I was like,
Winnipeg, yes. Yeah, I mean, sometimes we would have bigger lunches. Certainly on the weekends we would have bigger lunches, but our dinners our suppers were pretty normal, considered normal as well.
I mean, Abigail, I think, when you talk about your breakfasts are healthy and consistent, like I give you an example. For me, I usually have an organic protein green smoothie shake if I do have breakfast, but it'll be later, like 10 or 11 o'clock. And I do better that way. If you give me a bunch of pancakes or something like that, I'm just sluggish through the rest of the day or the rest of the morning, even if they're the high protein type.
And I don't know, Abigail, what you consider healthy, but I would never consider pancakes or cereal.
Ham and eggs and a big bowl of cereal.
Yeah, well, maybe ham and eggs, yes, or maybe again something light like what I mentioned: cottage cheese and strawberries with some almonds or some pecans or something, or a piece of cheese with on a crisp bread, or a couple of eggs and some veggies. Eggs and veggies. I mean, I'm describing here healthy breakfasts. So, and again, I don't know if you're asking this, but I have seen it so often where people, again, they can do their breakfast pretty easily, but it's that snacking and that overeating later on in the day where they're, frustrated or exhausted or for whatever reason. So what I suggest is you balance your day out a little bit more. Sometimes maybe, as Christopher was saying, have a larger lunch, so you're not susceptible later on in the day where you may be overly hungry and overly tired and overly eating, overeating. So, so that's what I would suggest, change it up a little bit and then see if that helps you.
Change it up, Buttercup.
Change it up. Yes.
Okay. We're going to go. Oh, we're still in the, wait a second. Where did, from Tucson. Boy, we're really heavy into the Western people this week. Brenda is from Ashland, Oregon. I know Ashland, Ohio, but so she's from Ashland, Oregon. She mentions that, hey, I took a fall last week. I wound up in the ER. No broken bones, but I still have a lot of back pain. What do you suggest I do?
Well, I'll defer most of it to you, but I'll just say, moist heat, some analgesic on your back, why are you
because my first thought was ice as opposed to heat.
Yes, ice with acute situations. Yes, ice with acute situations. But and
Brenda, you might be pretty cute, so we're just saying ice is good for you.
Yeah, so ice for acute situations, but
ice is nice. Rest is best.
Rest is good, and also an anti-inflammatory diet. Try and stay away from, red meats and sugar, and stick with vegetables and soups and comfort foods like that. Not necessarily comfort snack foods, but things that will be more anti-inflammatory, which are fruits and vegetables and some grains, and that would be good.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of using certain nutraceuticals, although that's a dirty word.
Absolutely.
My colleagues, like bioflavonoids. In particular, I like, if depending on how acute your pain is, you just say you're having back pain. So I don't know if is it sharp, is it achy, is it burning, is it tingling, where does it travel? I have all these questions for you. So I would suggest perhaps going to a chiropractor, a good massage therapist, an acupuncturist, get somebody to evaluate you, because once you're out of the ER, they kind of abandon you and tell you to go to your primary care provider.
Yeah, they do. Mhm.
And the other thing I really love after acute injury, and I include this usually in my protocol for post-surgical patients, which is to take proteolytic enzymes. So these are the enzymes that your body uses to digest protein and break it down into amino acids. And you take those proteolytic enzymes away from food, about a couple hours away from food, and they act as little Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man, gobbling up any debris that might be around there. So that's also good. And my favorite really is a ginger turmeric tea.
Mhm.
That's
That's
really good.
anti-inflammatory for sure. So
Yeah.
the proteolytic enzymes, you've got to make sure that it's not just a regular enzyme product
Yeah,
that
well, I
you're,
mean, but no, there's a whole wide range. I mean, it doesn't have to be Wobenzyme or some expensive one. There's some
yeah,
really good, easy, cost-effective proteolytic enzymes,
right. So
and it
you
just
want to make sure when you're shopping for these is it says proteolytic
yeah,
on it. So it's not just amylase and lipase
lipase,
and
protease.
yeah,
You want the
um,
protease. Get the protease. So
yeah. So very good call. And so, but
call.
what about creams and stuff? What about
Creams are
creams?
great. We actually have found in more than one instance homeopathic remedies to be really good. I had a program. This may still be available. I think I mentioned this before. A thing called Pain Shield, which was
Oh,
it
right.
was
We did
it was
talk
a
about there was an injury last week we talked about,
it's
right?
a broad spectrum homeopathic, and so you don't have to classify if the pain was sharp or achy or burning or tingling or comes and goes. So it was wide enough, and it was in a gel, an aloe vera base, and you could spread it on. And I tested this with even with there's one of my friends had her son fall off of a TV or something like that in one of the hotel rooms up in Wisconsin when I was attending a seminar, and I gave her the bottle of the stuff and she put it on the kid. No bruises, no nothing. I mean, it was just amazing because you would expect a giant welt and black eye and, all kinds of things.
Mhm.
And the kid was just, it was clear as could be. So a
Yeah,
broad
that's great.
spectrum
That's great.
homeopathic is pretty good. I do like some of the arnica creams that we actually get from Mexico. We just go to a pharmacy down there, and it's very inexpensive and very effective. So.
Yeah, and magnesium is also good if there's any soft tissue
Yeah, muscle
injury.
spasm, man, magnesium works really great. Magnesium also works well if you have a history of kidney stones. If you start feeling an ache or pain in the flank area, and you have a history of kidney stones, in addition to drinking water, you take the magnesium glycinate in high quantities. So
Yeah, I knew someone that had a very serious thing. Wasn't it you?
it was me.
Yeah,
I passed a kidney stone in Boulder, Colorado at
so
a I
appropriate
passed a
with the name.
stone at Boulder. Seriously, it felt
So
like a boulder.
ironically,
I had everybody working on me. I had two chiropractors working on me, an acupuncturist, a massage therapist,
well,
a
it's a good thing you
Reiki
didn't
person.
pass a boulder and stone, Colorado.
If I had gotten stoned, it would have been easier in Boulder, but that's another story.
No
Um,
boulders for you.
yeah, no more boulders for you. And the only thing that made a difference was I think it was Maxine, Charlie Cropley's wife or girlfriend or whatever the heck she was at the time. She sold me. I still remember this. She sold me a bottle of magnesium glycinate. Like she wouldn't open the bottle and give me 4 tablets. She made me buy it while I was in agony. Sorry, Maxine. I do remember this well. Anyway, so she sold me a bottle. And so I was taking as many as 4, I think 6, 5 or 6 of these at a time. Instantaneous relief. And so people, well, I was instantaneous. It took about maybe 15 minutes, but that was welcome relief because I had people working on me. You can't imagine how many people. It was like they were triaging me in one of the rooms off the main living room.
I mean, what an interesting thing to go in a seminar and have this colleague of yours writhing on the floor.
And you're going to sell them something.
Oh well, yeah,
Fond
magnesium
memories,
back to any muscle issue, magnesium is
fond
a
memories
great.
of Health Coach Systems International.
There you go. It was a great
It was great.
experience.
It was a great experience. I will
Not
say.
your experience, but
No,
that
that part was the bad one. That was the part I'd like to forget
you
forever,
raised. Yes, yes.
forever.
So
Um,
I hope you're going to feel better soon, Brenda, because I mean, injuries are no fun. And yeah,
yeah, and
absolutely. Go to a chiropractor, get some care, or
get some additional care. I
physiotherapist,
mean, yeah,
physical
I mean,
therapist,
go to an Ayurvedic practitioner. I'm sure there are a lot of good Ayurvedic remedies.
Ayurveda, acupuncture. Get that taken care of.
Trying to find something here. Is that my little? Oh, I can't do that. I was going to show you the little video.
Oh, okay. So we're
before we go.
wrapping up.
I think we're pretty close. Is there anything in particular? I mean, I can show
No,
this
I think
video.
we've answered all our Q&As.
I can show this, and we can talk again about it. I think.
Okay, why don't we do that?
I just think it's kind of interesting, just because it was so visual.
So preface it a little bit of what are we watching again?
This is a video from BioNTech, which is the company that partnered with Pfizer for the Pfizer COVID vaccine. Now, it's interesting. It's called the what is it? It's the BHT 162, and it has a completely different name in Europe. By the way, I found that to be fascinating. It's not called the Pfizer vaccine. I think they just partnered with Pfizer, quite frankly, for the distribution, because and for manufacturing, because they were a very small company in Germany, and now the husband and wife, who are two of the founders, are two of the richest people in all of Germany, which is
roll tape.
Roll tape. Oh, certainly I can find the share screen thing here. I want to share. I think I want to share actually QuickTime, and then I'll unshare this in a moment here. Where is my QuickTime? Come on, you can find it. You can find it. I gotta find my. It's a window, not a Chrome tab. Now I see what's happening here. This is the beauty of live.
Please, bear with us. We will get this up, and hopefully it's fascinating for you. There we go. It will be
fascinating. I like the British voice too. Come on.
BN162b2 is a nucleoside-modified mRNA vaccine, whereby the mRNA encodes the non-infectious full SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. It is a non-infectious vaccine encapsulated by lipid nanoparticles to protect the mRNA and enable entry into the cytosols of antigen-presenting cells. Once the vaccine enters the cell cytosol via endocytosis, the lipid nanoparticles are dispersed rapidly after cellular uptake, and the mRNA is released into the cytosol and translated. The non-infectious spike protein antigen, which is the target of the neutralizing antibodies needed for protection, is presented to helper T cells. As a result, CD4 positive helper T cells then activate B cells, which release spike protein-specific neutralizing antibodies that are critical to bind and eliminate the virus, thereby inhibiting SARS-CoV-2 spread from cell to cell and neutralizing the virus. CD4 positive helper T cells activate CD8 positive cytotoxic T cells, which attack and eliminate virus-infected cells, thereby preventing the production of new viruses. The lipid nanoparticles and mRNA are disassembled and metabolized within 1 to 3 days in the body. The lipids are eliminated via the feces. Following vaccination, the adaptive immune system also forms memory T and B cells, which will recognize future SARS-CoV-2 exposure, thereby stimulating an immune response. These critical cellular and humoral responses work in concert and are thought to be critical to potentially achieving prevention of disease. Global phase 3 clinical trials for BNT162 are currently ongoing. With over 150 global clinical trial sites and over 44,000 participants and subjects over 16 years of age, BioNTech and Pfizer are assessing its effectiveness in preventing COVID-19. BioNTech, together with their global partner, Pfizer, is committed to leveraging their deep knowledge in mRNA technology to develop a COVID-19 vaccine to help end this pandemic.
Now it's a bit of a marketing piece.
Yeah, definitely interesting last video.
But I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by the illustrations of the T cells, the B cells, and everything else. Anyway, so that was my entertainment for late last night when I couldn't go to sleep. So,
Yeah, it's definitely a promo, and
but the illustrations are very accurate, though, because I've looked at Science and Nature journals. I looked at the British Medical Journal. I looked at Lancet and a few others, and those illustrations are pretty amazing and pretty accurate. But it's still, a vaccine is not going to be your best choice. The best choice really is to keep your immune system boosted. So.
Yeah, and it was interesting, how they seem to think, express in this that booster shots may not be necessary.
Well, they didn't express it in this one well at all, but what was more interesting to me was looking at some of the more recent studies which show that somebody who was sick with COVID-19 then took the vaccine had I can't remember if it was 5-fold or was it 10-fold level of protection from COVID-19 than somebody who had only had vaccines without having gotten COVID. So that was interesting.
It seemed to, though, say that perhaps it does get rid of it long term, but maybe I'm reading into it, reading something into it.
Well, it's the thing that's fascinating to me is just the notion that, and this is what's really got me rethinking everything in terms of vaccines and other stuff. I mean, I've never been a proponent of the flu vaccine or other things like that. I think I was greatly influenced by my father. What intrigues me are innovations like messenger RNA. And the reason I say that is because many years ago, I had problems with my right eye. And I was actually getting bleeding in the back of my right eye. And the bleeding was obscuring a lot of the retinal cells. And I wound up, it was Genentech created a product called Avastin. And I actually, instead of having surgery in my eye, I had injections directly into my eye of Avastin, and it stopped the bleeding, cleared up a lot of the dead cells and debris, and stabilized my vision. And so what I recognized,
was it retinopathy? Was it?
Yeah, the whole
vitrectomies?
No. Just bleeding and stretching of a potential tear of the retina. But so what had happened was there were just blood vessels that had burst in the back of the eye.
Right.
So rather than having surgical intervention, it was a question of injection. And this was one of the first products ever produced by the folks who had discovered the human genome, or had mapped the entire human genome up in Maryland, actually. And so what I came to recognize is that even though I was eating a lot of organic food, taking supplements, living basically a fairly healthy lifestyle, I looked back on it last night and I thought to myself, I'm actually partially a product of genetic engineering because of the Avastin.
So in Avastin, I wonder, my husband had several he had diabetic retinopathy, and I'm just wondering if I guess he didn't get this
I don't know, but I was just so curious about it because I come to recognize certain things. Like, for example, years ago when there was not such a thing as dialysis, people died. When there were no, and I thought back to when my dad, I think it was in his mid 70s, 76, 75, he needed a triple bypass. And so if he was 100% organic, never go anywhere near a medical doctor or they would kill you, he wouldn't have lived another 18 years. Because he would have had a fatal heart attack with three almost entirely blocked vessels. And mind you, this is a guy who took vitamins regularly, ate tons of vegetables and everything, but still genetically wound up with narrowing of the coronary arteries. One of them, in fact, 100% blocked, such that blood flowed one way to the blockage and blood flowed the other way to the blockage. And so the blood was flowing this way to try and compensate for the fact that one of the main coronary arteries was completely blocked. So it brought me to this point of acknowledging that not everything that is traditional medical or innovative is necessarily bad, but also that when you look at things, and Daniel Amen, Dr. Amen up in LA, is one of those people who has been
in Orange County, actually.
Yeah, well, Orange County, the area. He broadcasts as if he's from LA, but what's interesting about it is that he who proposed eating organic, supplements, natural living, healthy living, stress relief, everything else like that. He and his wife, Tana, went to Disneyland and got the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine. And he was ripped to shreds.
Right.
You're a traitor. You're this, you're that. You're everything else.
It does make sense. I mean, we call it integrative care. We call it, using the best of whatever's available, so we integrate traditional, Western, let's call it Western and alternative or traditional types of modalities.
And I will say that in Western medicine, we are overly medicated, overly vaccinated, and overly stressed.
And overly closed to other options.
Yeah, and overly closed to other options. But on the other hand, though, if you need life-saving procedures, like heroic procedures, let's say that you fractured 2 legs simultaneously, you can eat the best organic food possible and pray and everything else like that. But if you really want somebody to set those bones, and like in the case of my dad, when he had a major 8 fractures of his lower right leg, they put in steel rods and plates and screws. I called him that he was screwed by an orthopedic surgeon. So,
I mean, I could be criticized too, because I've been sort of an alternative holistic practitioner and proponent for all my career, but my husband would not be alive without Western medicine. So this is
the balance that I'm talking about.
Balance, absolutely.
You come to a recognition, for example, that conventionally grown fruits and vegetables just don't have the same nutrient profile that organic does. And I've seen it with depleted soil over and over and over and over again. So the more natural your intake, the better off you're going to be. But just take, for example, there are thousands, over 2,000 chemicals a year. New chemicals are released into the atmosphere. And we are bombarded by so many chemicals in the water, in the air, in the soil, and other places, that I think, you have to be as natural as possible. And at the same time, for emergencies and for something that may be a little more out of your control from your vitamins, is to take advantage of newer technologies.
The best of all worlds, of all worlds. And I even talk about, I don't know if we're going to open up a can of worms, so to speak, but even this non-gluten focus in our healthy eating panorama, or in our world, everyone's trying to go non-gluten, but John Diard, who's a Ayurvedic practitioner, he's also a chiropractor in Colorado, and he wrote a book called Eat Wheat, I think, and it was essentially building up your ability to eat this. Like, the reason you're not able to break it down is because you're impaired, and how can we build that up so you can eat these kinds of things, foods.
By the way, when it came to lactose and things like that, I remember being in Europe and having no trouble with dairy there.
Yeah, so it is.
It makes me wonder if it's the proteins. The proteins are chemicals in the milk products that we have, even the organic ones I should say the conventional ones, more likely, that maybe it's the proteins, the quality of the proteins themselves, and not actually the lactose. So who knows?
Yeah, really. I mean, you hear this all the time. I mean, you hear that about bread going to Europe. I was fine. When I came home, I couldn't tolerate it. So
And that could be the fungus that grows on wheat, the way it's stored in moist, dark, warm environments, as opposed to dry. So.
Inferior quality, processing, all of these factors. The soil may be less better. It
needs to be more better, but it's less
better. It's not as good as the European counterpart, I suppose.
All right. Anyway, we're overtime.
We are overtime. Very dynamic conversation today. So
it was a good one. Come back. Come back.
More good. It was more good.
It was more better. It was more better. We hope you get all more better. Stay healthy and get more better if you're not healthy.
Stay healthy. Have a great if you're in this country, have a great long weekend. And if
you're not in this country, have a great regular weekend.